The 1%er Podcast with Sam Bakhtiar, bringing you the 1% knowledge to help you reach your full potential. Learn what it takes to rise above the 99% and become a 1%er.
Hey, welcome to the 1%er Podcast. This is your host, Sam Bakhtiar, and have a very special guest, NAZ Barouti, in the house. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, NAZ reached out to me because she sees a problem. There's a problem with a lot of entrepreneurs because all we do right now is hustle, 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 make money, but we don't do anything to protect it.
Right.
And you're an attorney, and you want to talk to us about ways that we can grow our business and start protecting our assets.
Right. Well, it was twofold of why I reached out to you. One, I love what people like you, entrepreneurs, are doing on social media, motivating people, teaching people how to make money, just really positive. I love that. And specifically for you, I have a lot of respect for you because you comment, respond to every comment. You're very engaging, and a lot of people, when they get to the level that you are, they don't do that. So number one, I had to acknowledge you for that. But also, I see that this field is being dominated by men. And I'm like, why aren't all the ladies like reaching out to these powerful powerhouses that have a platform and kind of showing our position about what it takes to be a female entrepreneur? Because at the end of the day, I think you did a video today where you're talking about the differences between men and women. I can learn so much from you, but at the end of the day, being a woman is very different when you walk into 100%. A room. So that was number one. Number two, the trend that I'm seeing with entrepreneurs is that they make a lot of money. They know how to make money. They don't know how to protect it.
Oh, well, I'm one of them.
They don't know, and I don't mean how to protect it, you know, when the market crashes. I'm talking about what happens if you get into an accident and you pass away. And these are conversations that people don't want to have. No one wants to talk about taxes, and no one wants to talk about passing away. So this is where I come in, and I always joke, I'm kind of like the Grim Reaper. I always have bad news, but it's so important to have these conversations before something bad happens.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. So what is the first step?
Okay, so
what is the first step?
You have this amazing garage, right? So you have a gate before you enter this area, and that's great. That's the first step. But someone can, you know, just flip over that gate and come in, and then they'll come to your door. There's a security alarm. That's great that you have the security alarm, but they can cut the security alarm. Then they cut the security alarm and they come here. You have to have like a vault in between you and whoever's trying to come into your space. So the first step, the gate, is having an estate plan. And what I mean by that is a revocable trust, a will, a power of attorney, and a healthcare directive.
Okay, so I know a little bit. I mean, I don't know a little bit. I've heard of terminology. Revocable trust. And there's another type of trust.
Irrevocable.
Okay, so let's talk about what you just said, revocable trust and all that.
So revocable trust, you can change it at any time. You're in control. You can put conditions. You can sell assets. You can take out beneficiaries, and by beneficiaries I mean the people that will inherit what you leave behind if you pass away. Irrevocable.
So if my daughter pisses me off, I can just take her off.
Oh yeah, believe me, I have so many stories about parents, you know, getting pissed off at kids and just disinheriting them. Yeah. Hopefully that won't happen for you.
Oh, it's close. I'm close. My 10-year-old kid pushing me. My 10-year-old kid pushing me.
So we have revocable, then we have irrevocable, where you can't change it and you can't be in control, and that goes on along the lines of asset protection, and we can get into that later. But usually the revocable trust is the base that I set up for clients. Now, a will, everyone confuses this. If they have a will, they don't need a revocable trust. They are two separate, different documents. A will is good for people that have assets under $150,000 or less. So like, let's say you just rent an apartment and you have a couple bank accounts and you don't have much. You could do a will. But for someone that has over $150,000 and they have a lot of real estate and businesses, you have to do a trust to avoid something called probate court. And if I tell you,
I heard it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare, and this is where attorneys make the most money. And I may be a traitor to my profession, but this is where we can make a big amount of money when you don't plan, because probate court takes a percentage, the attorney takes a percentage of your estate. And let me give you an example so it can make more sense and that fear that you need to have will register. If you, let's say, have $15 million in assets, the probate court alone takes half a percentage of $15 million. And then an attorney takes another percentage. So before you know it, you can lose 50 to 60% of your assets. And it's not just about losing the money, it's time consuming, someone else is in control, and you don't have a plan. And I always tell people, if you don't have a plan, the government has one for you. Not because of the kindness of their own heart, but because they want to make money. Yeah. So it's important to plan. And the best way to think about it is estate planning is, if you don't have it, it's like driving in your vehicle, not having a seatbelt on, crashing, flying out of the window, the paramedics come, and then you're like, I want to put my seatbelt back on. It's too late at that point.
Too late.
So timing is everything when it comes to estate planning. So we got will, we got revocable trust. Another thing about the will that's really important that I'm sure a lot of your audience would want to know. If you have minor children, the will decide who the guardian of those minor children will be.
But the will is for anybody, from your recommendation, anybody with $150,000 or less in total assets.
Yes.
Their net worth is less than $150,000.
Yes.
And for people who are over $150,000, you recommend a revocable trust.
Yes, the trust. But the good thing about the will is we do something called a pour over will. Pour over. So basically that document will state anything that I forgot to transfer when I passed away is going to pour over to my trust. So let's say you buy a house and you forget to put it, you have to fund the trust.
Right.
Okay, you have to transfer the asset and think of the trust as a piggy bank, and you keep adding money in it. If you don't do that, the pour over will collect everything you forgot and pour it over. So it's a safety net. But it's also good for parents that have minor kids to name guardians. You know, there's this misconception that if you have a religious ceremony and you name a godfather or godmother, they can just step in and the court will allow them to be guardian.
That's not at home.
That's not allowed.
Wow.
You have to select. And even then, when you have a list of people, the court still has to approve it. So you may have a friend that lives in New York, but your child is 17 and they're about to graduate. They're not going to let that kid move to New York. They're going to go down the list and find someone more suitable to take care of that child. So that's the will. Then there's two documents that I think are so crucial, and everyone needs them if you're over 18. A power of attorney for financial decisions and a power of attorney for medical decisions.
Yes.
Okay. This is the touchy one because people think that they're invincible. And I always say accidents don't discriminate against age, gender, your race. It doesn't matter. If it's your time, it's your time, if it's going to happen. So the power of attorney will allow someone to step into your shoes to make financial and medical decisions for you. And this is the one where I make people cry in my office because I'm like, well, you know, if you're on life support, do you want to stay on life support? If two doctors have confirmed there's no hope for recovery and they just look at me like, I can't believe you're asking me this question. And it's a reality that we have to face. So that is an estate plan. And I guarantee you that a lot of people don't even have that base. And it's really critical that you get these documents in order. Okay. Then we go on to asset protection. So,
okay. So let me just go back because I want to make sure I understand everything. Okay, there's a will, there's a revocable trust. Okay, and you know, in the revocable trust, you know, you need a revocable trust, assets over 150,000, and you can put minors in it
as beneficiaries. Yes.
And you can also have the power of attorney for your medical and for your finances.
Correct.
Okay.
Another thing about the revocable trust, for those of you that have children and they're minors, you can put conditions on when they can access the assets. And I think a lot of parents like to control from the grave. So believe me, I have seen everything and anything you can think of on conditions. Like I've had parents that put, you have to have a bachelor's in a science degree, or like you can't marry outside of your religion, you can't be a smoker, there's drug testing. Anything you can think of, I've seen drafted in these documents. I've even drafted a trust that left everything to a pet. Like, I'm not even kidding you.
Wow.
Left everything to their dog. Like the house cannot be sold until the dog passes away, and then it's crazy. But you want to do that. You don't want an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old to just inherit all of these assets. You want them to have conditions and kind of work for, you know, what you worked hard for.
Oh, absolutely. You don't want, you know, an 18-year-old to all of a sudden get a few $100,000 in their bank account.
No, they'll blow it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll blow it.
100%.
Or, you know, there are some parents that will put college degree is required. And I always tell them, look, Some children thrive when they don't go to school.
No, 100%.
So when you put those conditions, you got to be really careful. Like
College is not for everybody.
No, it is not. And you know this yourself, that you've seen many entrepreneurs that have been successful and they don't have even a college degree, but they know how to make money.
Yes.
So be careful and cautious of what kind of conditions you put.
For me, age is the most important thing. For me, like I said, for me, it's like I want them to get a little bit when they're 18, maybe a little bit more when they're 25, and maybe a little more when they're 30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like to control the age because with me, I know myself, you know, the maturity just came from wisdom and aging.
Yeah, of course. You know, another thing that's important is who you select to kind of manage that money for the child. This is another thing that I think is important because it's called, the term is trustee. So even in the term, it's someone that you trust. I don't recommend just putting one person. I kind of like to put 2 or 3 people to have like a little bit of checks and balances.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to be in control over everything when you pass away. And you want them, number one, to kind of have an okay relationship with your beneficiaries. But number 2, you don't want them to be in full control. A lot of clients will use banks to be, you know, corporate trustees. I'm iffy about that because with the banks, it's all about money. So you kind of want to have someone that personally knows you and can understand how you want things to be divided. So now we're going to go to asset protection because I think that's the one that most entrepreneurs fail to achieve.
We're good at acquiring assets.
Yeah, you're good at acquiring assets, not so much protecting it. Asset protection is big right now, and there are different ways to structure assets so that if you personally get sued, and they come after whatever you own, there's like a barrier between what you have and that person trying to get it. And you know yourself, you're well known, you're successful. There are always people that are money hungry. We live in a country where lawsuits are so big and any second someone can sue you. You look at someone the wrong way. You look at someone the wrong way and they're like, okay, I'm gonna sue you for looking at me the wrong way. And you know, with this whole Me Too movement, that's another reason to protect your assets. And I'm not a traitor to my gender. However, it's gotten a little bit out of hand.
Well, I mean, it's not about being a traitor to your gender. It's just calling it what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's no doubt that there are men that have done, you know, bad things and, you know, all that. But there's also, you know, when there's something bad happens, there's people trying to piggyback off of it and trying to make, you know, some quick bucks. So we know all about that.
Yeah. And so you got to be careful. So with asset protection, there's different types of trusts, like the irrevocable trust that we were talking about. There's different trusts called SPA trusts, and we set up business entities like LLCs and corporations, and we structure the business so that these irrevocable trusts kind of own the majority of it, so that if you personally get sued, no one can come after your assets. And again, the timing is so important. If you already get sued and you call me up and you're like, Naz, I'm getting sued for $10 million, I can't help you. Because if I set that kind of structure up, the judge is gonna consider it a fraudulent transfer because you got sued and you're trying to hide your assets now. So it's really important to do it before something happens. And then business planning. Business planning also kind of aligns with asset protection because people start businesses, but they don't have the right structure. So they keep everything in their name, they're sole proprietors. Something happens in the course of the business, then they come after their personal residence. So you gotta know what kind of business entity to structure the business, LLCs, corporations. And with business partners, there are so many people that get into business with friends and family. You better have an operating agreement, a partnership agreement, a buy-sell agreement of what happens when a partner dies, because most of the fights I see are with business partners.
You know, yeah, I've seen it. I think when the business partners, if I'm not mistaken, I did some studies, you know, on that. You know, they said you have to address the 4 Ds, which is like, I think, death, divorce, disability, and departure. You know what I mean? And yeah, you're so right, because 99% of partnerships fail.
Yeah. What I like to do when I go into any partnership, whether that's romantic or professional, it's like, hey, let's talk about first how we're gonna end this partnership first.
Holy shit! Isn't it romantic? Wait a second. Oh, I was like, did I hear just right? So you meet a guy, you're just starting to date him. Like, okay, so when this ends, you know, let's talk about how we're gonna end it.
Well, I mean, it's not like I'm not talking about like I just went on a date. I'm talking about like if I'm gonna marry someone, we're gonna have a prenup.
Got it.
We're gonna have a prenup, and if we're already married, we're gonna have a postnup because 50% of marriages end in divorce. Things get really complicated, and I'd rather talk about money when I love someone rather than when I want to tear their head off.
Yeah.
So it's important to have these conversations, especially in business. So people come to me and they're like, we want to start this business. This is how we want to structure it. I'm like, before you do that, how are you going to depart from this business? Let's talk about that.
You start
first.
with the end in mind.
Yes, always, because nothing is guaranteed.
Nobody wants to talk about divorce. Nobody wants to talk about death.
No, or taxes.
Or taxes, right? So nobody wants to talk about it, but you know what? It's death is definite. Divorce is a 50% chance, right? So it's better you talk about it than don't talk about it. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and with asset protection, I guess you can categorize prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. I mean, we live in California, so California is a community property state, which means the minute that you get married, everything that you earn becomes part of the community. So it gets divided 50-50 if there's a divorce. So there are ways to protect your assets, especially since if you are an entrepreneur and you're growing your business and you start making a lot of money and then you get married, you kind of want to protect what you earned before the marriage. And I'm not saying be money hungry. I'm just saying have barriers in place to protect what you have. And sometimes we see that families inherit certain assets and your parents kind of want you to protect an asset that's been handed down through generation. So you want the prenup, postnup. So that's essentially what I do in my practice. I do business planning, estate planning, and asset protection. So these are really important topics that I think entrepreneurs.
Okay, so asset protection. We talked about estate planning. And asset protection. You talk about the irrevocable trust. So, what's the difference between irrevocable trust and a trust?
So when you do irrevocable trust, you're essentially taking that asset and gifting it to the irrevocable trust. So there's a lot of gift tax return. I'm not going to get too complicated with the tax stuff.
Tax benefits, right?
Yeah, you're shifting it out of your name. Right now in your lifetime, if you're a married couple, you can gift about $22 million without any tax consequences. Anything above that, then your estate.
How many million dollars?
22 million.
Holy crap.
Yeah, 22 million. It's going to go back down to 11 million in 2026. But it will stay consistently at that rate. But then there are different trusts that we can set up so that if your estate is over that amount, if the estate has to pay a tax return on the estate, we can set up something called an irrevocable life insurance trust so that the assets are not sold to pay the IRS. You set up an insurance account, a policy, to pay off the taxes for that estate. Yeah. There are different things that we can do. The irrevocable trust, like I said, you're essentially taking it out of your name. You're naming someone else to kind of manage it. You kind of don't have control over it. And everyone gets afraid. They're like, well, I don't want to just give everything away. I'm like, look, you're putting a barrier between yourself and this person that's managing it for you. It could be for your kids. It could be for your family, that asset. But you want to have a barrier so that you're not liable for anything. So the hardest part, I think, for clients is finding someone that they can trust to manage that estate for them. And sometimes they will pick me to be their protector, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just happy that they do that they have that conversation and they know that if they don't take certain steps, their assets are in danger.
Got it. So you can actually have your attorney manage it. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
okay.
But you got to be cautious of attorneys too.
Of course.
There are a lot of bad attorneys out there, and there are a lot of attorneys that say that they specialize in a specific field and they don't. If you are looking for the right type of attorney, just make sure that they specialize in that area of the law. The way I always talk about it is I'm like, look, if you have a heart condition, you're not going to go to your OBGYN. You're going to go to a cardiologist. Same thing with the law.
So let's talk about that really quick. Because I made a mistake before. I go, just look up an attorney and hire them, and it was like, oh my God,
it was a disaster.
She was horrible.
Yeah.
Right. I hired one attorney, then I paid all this money, and I found out that he was being disbarred. Ooh. And then next thing I lost it. Wow. I literally lost it. Like he was being disbarred because he faked some documents to get a loan. And he got caught or whatever. And
God, I think I know this attorney.
Yeah. You probably know him. You know what I mean? So
sounds familiar.
Yeah. So So it was really like I've done mistakes with that. So let's just say somebody's looking for an attorney. Okay. What would be the best place for them to? I mean, like if I want to go to a restaurant, I go to Yelp. You know what I mean?
You can go to the State Bar website, California State Bar. If you put someone's name in the search engine, it will come up. It will show you if they have any pending cases or any disciplinary actions that the State Bar has brought against them. If you had probably looked up that person on the State Bar website, you would have probably saved yourself so much time, money, and headache. Also, word of mouth. If you ask other people, like, hey, this is what I need. Do you know any attorneys?
Is there some accredited website or a place where, like, people go, like, rate attorneys and things like that?
I don't really like those websites only because a lot of those
Could be
attorneys
manipulated,
pay.
right?
Yeah, it's like Yelp.
Yeah.
Sometimes they hide your good reviews so that you call them and pay. I don't want to diss any company. I don't want to get sued.
But it's true. Well, we hate Yelp.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Yelp. Like, a lot of small business owners have a lot of problems with Yelp, but word of mouth is the best, and the State Bar website, because that's the one that's going to be regulated. It's not going to be BS. It's not going to be someone's opinion because they were in a bad mood and they came into the facility or worked with that attorney and write like a bad review. Because some of those Yelp reviews are not solid. So I would go to the State Bar website. Ask word of mouth.
So it looks like if you want the most amount of protection, then you have to give up some control.
You do, but I think that's how it is in any aspect of your life.
Right?
You gotta give up a little bit of control, but you gotta go to someone that you know is gonna have your best interest. It's not about like a paycheck, and that's how it's always been for me. That I truly want to help my clients, because lawyers have a bad rep already. That we're just money hungry and we're trying to take advantage of people. But I've seen so many people get taken advantage of, and I was like, I am not gonna have a practice that runs like this, and I want people to have the most information that they can. That's why I wrote a book for all the women out there.
Oh, you have
yes,
a book out.
I do.
Let's talk about your book.
I brought you a book too.
You do? Awesome.
It's called Love, Death, and Money, A Woman's Guide to Protecting Yourself, to legally protecting yourself. Yeah.
And are you married?
No.
You have a boyfriend?
No.
Okay, man, I'll be scared to date you, man.
That's probably why I'm single. No, it's really hard. Let me tell you, Sam, in Los Angeles, it's very difficult to meet, number one, people that are on your level. Number two, people that are ethical. And number three, men that are okay with a woman in power. It's very, very difficult to be okay with that. Sometimes you kind of have to, I don't want to say dumb yourself down, but the minute they find out that you're an entrepreneur, a professional, you have all this stuff going for you, they get intimidated. So I really need to find someone that's confident.
I always tell people this, man. I'm like, I will love a powerful woman. The only thing that I will have a problem with, if she's making more money than me, is I need to find a way. It'll be like Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
Because I'm like this. How much is she making? I was like, I gotta just make $1
more.
Just $1 more. You know what I mean? So as a part of like my man ego, if you would,
I know.
Know what I mean? Like I would want to. I'll be happy for her.
Yeah.
But I would compete with her.
Yeah, because you're hunters and you're providers.
Yes, you know
I get that. I totally get that. But I always joke and I say there are two things that a man always needs in his life: a good woman and a good lawyer, and I'm both.
That's
so
what I'm talking about.
that's gonna be like my intro line to like a dating website. But no, men have told me that before. They're like, you make more money than me and I'm not okay with it, but I'm gonna work really hard to get to your level. And I'm like, no, dude, don't do it because you wanna get to my level. Do it for yourself first and don't compare yourself. We might be at different stages. I worked very early on. Like, I had a father that was very, very focused. And when I was in high school, he's like, first year of high school, he's like, so what's your college major going to be? I'm like, well, I just started high school. He's like, no, you got to keep thinking ahead.
I love that.
Thinking ahead.
That's the way it's supposed to be. I wish more parents did. You can't just be like, oh, senior year. Oh, by the way, what do you want to do? You have 4 years to think about what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's not like you can't just decide in last year or last 15 minutes, what are you going to do in your life?
Time is money. Wasting time is so bad.
That's what I'm talking about.
And now I'm 35 years old and I see some of my friends that are 35 and they're just trying to start their careers. And I'm like, you used to laugh at me when I wouldn't go out on the weekends and I wouldn't mess around and do this and party. And now you're asking me for a job. I'd be more than happy to help you and kind of guide you. But I'm so happy back then that I didn't, I used to be mad at my dad for a lot of the things that he would make me do. But now I'm like, wow. Because if I tell you this man, what he pushed me to achieve, it's amazing.
But if you look at some of the greatest businessmen and some of the greatest athletes in the world, they had a tough parent.
Yes.
Whether it was a mom or it was a dad, because they set the higher standard for them, And when I study success, man, and that's essential. That's like a prerequisite. You're a child that you were born here. Somebody needs to set the bar high for you to be able to do that. And if they don't do that, man, you just wing life.
You can't live a life of being mediocre. I mean, you have daughters. And one thing that I think is so important as a father is to not treat your sons and your daughters differently. If you're going to push your son to be the best that he can be, you got to do the same thing for your daughters. And my dad did that. He kind of raised me like a son. Like, you got to be a go-getter, you got to make your own money, so then no one else can control you. And I think that's a problem that we see with a lot of women, is they're not legally and financially literate. And because of that, they get into relationships where they depend financially on someone else, and then they get stuck in these unhappy marriages and relationships. So it's important to kind of stand your own ground.
No, 100%. So we talked about business protection, you know, and business planning. And you talked about, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs. When I first started, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, I went to chiropractic school, and I went to Penn State, I graduated, got my doctorate degree. My mom said, when you become a doctor, everybody's going to give you money. That wasn't true. You know, I had creditors calling me, a credit card calling me, and all that. So I started my business, and all I wanted to do was just make money to be able to pay my bills, because I didn't want to move back to Pennsylvania with my mom. You know, and I just operated, you know, as a sole proprietor, you know, and for the first 2 years. And then later on, my accountant was like, hey, first of all, you got to save on taxes and, you know, have some protection.
Yeah.
And that's when I started my corporation. Now, what would you recommend when somebody, you know, starting their business? Would you recommend going corporation, or you recommend LLC, and what's the difference?
You know, it just depends on what type of business you're setting up. I see a lot of entrepreneurs that have rental properties, and that's their business, is buying real estate, renting it out, flipping it. I recommend doing limited liability companies if you're going to have a property. And this is another thing that a lot of people do. They have LLCs, but the LLC has one member. What you don't understand, a lot of these entrepreneurs, is that when you have a one-member LLC, there is no asset protection. Your tax returns get filed on your personal tax returns. There's no separate tax return. So a lot of accountants and attorneys I'm seeing are setting up limited liability companies with one member. There's no asset protection. Even if you give 1% to a spouse, that will create some asset protection. So if you're in real estate, I recommend doing LLC, especially if you are in construction, you're flipping homes, LLC. If you're a business and you're doing more like transactional, you have a storefront, corporation. Now with the taxes, that's not my area of expertise so much, but you have to ask your accountant as far as S Corp, C Corp, but the base is the most important, LLC or corporation.
Got it. Awesome, awesome. So when somebody is starting, you know, starting out a business, you know, you recommend right away, without even anything, to start an LLC or S Corp?
I recommend, I did that myself just because I want to create that barrier of what's the businesses and what's mine personally. And I think that because I had that set up from the beginning, then I kind of knew how I wanted to structure the business and which way I wanted to go, and I could do tax write-offs with certain things and expenses that I was using. And there's an advantage to setting up the business right away.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around revocable trust and irrevocable trust, right? You know, because that's very interesting to me. You know, so I'm going to give you the scenario. You tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
Right? Revocable trust, you can put people back in any time. It's really easy. You know, it's really easy to add people in, and, you know, and all that. It gives you some asset protection.
It provides no asset protection.
No asset protection.
No, it just protects you from probate court. So if you personally get sued, they can still go after the revocable trust.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So no asset protection, but the reason you do that, because when you pass away, then there is some rhyme or reason. Everybody knows what they're getting and how it's going to be distributed and all that. And you recommend then have an attorney for health and for finances in there, you know, to do that. Okay. The irrevocable trust gives you asset protection.
Yes.
Okay. Gives you asset protection. You give up some control, you know, and it also have tax savings.
Yeah, because you're using the tax exemption of how much you can gift in a lifetime. You're gifting it right away. Yeah. So you're setting that up. And what I do with a lot of clients too is I set up foundations. So like a charity that you want to start, we just get IRS approval that you're starting a foundation. There's a purpose, there's a charity purpose. And what we do is that we can put your future children as members of this foundation, and they're running an organization that you're passionate about. For example, if you were to start a foundation for young teenagers that, you know, for their health and whatever it may be, that foundation can keep going on and going on and going on, and there's a tax write-off in that. So if you're over that exemption amount of $22 million, you can set up a foundation and put some of that money in there, and you have a tax write-off there.
I love that.
Yeah, and you're contributing to society.
I love that. Okay, have I missed anything? Is there any other forms of asset protection that we haven't talked about?
We touched about the prenups and postnups, but that conversation.
I know what a prenup is.
Yeah.
Right. So I know what a prenup is, and then before somebody get married, hey, once if we ever break up, we ever divorce,
this is how we're going to divide it.
Here's how we're going to divide it. What is a postnup?
Postnup is you're already married. So a lot of the times what we see, especially with celebrity clients, is that we will do a prenup, but we'll have something called a sunset clause in there, which means after 5 years, the prenup expires, we go back to the drawing board and then create a postnuptial agreement. So they're already married, because sometimes a spouse will make more money before the marriage and then they stop working and the other spouse kind of takes the lead. So you kind of want to make it fair, a fair exchange. So postnup is after you're married.
Oh, awesome, awesome. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that exists.
I'm like, after we get married, we're going to still renegotiate.
But listen, it's harder to kind of get someone to sign a postnup when you've already are married and you're already in that relationship. So you don't have that much leeway in trying to get them to sign.
I remember one of my clients was getting married to a guy, and the guy was pretty well off, and she was a pretty woman. And they were like so excited about getting married, but right before getting married, I mean, she got like a prenup that was like 50 pages long or something like that, and she was like, "You got to be kidding me," So they never went through it. That broke them up.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've broken up a lot of engagements because of like the prenup, and
you broken up. That's your claim to fame.
My tagline. But you know what? They have been so thankful that has happened, because they saw that person's true colors, and then they come back to me 2 years and they're like, "I am so happy you kind of pushed me to get this, because that person didn't work out, but this person's working out, and they're working with me to want to sign something like that." And listen, prenups have a bad rap, but it's also a tool for the person that's not making a lot of money. Like, if you are going to stay home and take care of the family, you're still contributing to the community. And it's like, if I'm giving up my career to stay home and raise kids, then I need to be, given something back.
Whenever I hear the term prenup, it reminds me of this. I was at an event in Chicago. One of my friends is a big-time real estate guy in Chicago. His name is J.T. Fox. He has many buildings and things like that. And one of the guests was Donald Trump back then. This was 12 years ago. And J.T. is a tall, good-looking guy, And Donald was walking right by him. He saw him. He went up to him and goes, "I just have 2 words for you: prenup." And he walked away. And I looked at him. I looked at J.T. I'm like, "Oh my God!"
Wait, Donald Trump said this to your friend?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Because he's a very well-off guy, and he's a good-looking guy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, make sure you protect yourself.
He just said, "I just have 2 words for you: prenup," and he walked away.
You know what's funny, Sam, though? I'm seeing more women kind of push for prenups nowadays, because they're getting married later in life, or it's like their second, third marriage.
Women are killing it right now.
Yeah, they're killing it. They're making a lot of money. They're getting married later in life, so they're working and focusing on their careers more. So you would be surprised the number of women that actually come and start that conversation with their significant other.
Let's just say a couple has been married, and now they're having like second thoughts and all that kind of stuff. What if it's not going to work and all that kind of stuff? And now one spouse want to push for postnup.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation? Like how I'm just thinking it would be an awkward conversation.
The way to do it is, listen, we are in this relationship together. Let's come up to a conclusion for ourselves, rather than letting the lawyers take all our money. Because that's what ends up happening, is that you get lawyers involved.
Happened with me in my first marriage.
You get lawyers involved, and it's like, you're just blowing money. All the attorneys are taking the money. It's like, it's better to come to a conclusion together, come to a compromise, either go through mediation, something other than like working with lawyers. And I know this is bad. I'm a lawyer myself, but
it's the truth.
Yeah, it's the truth. It's a reality. So I think that talking about, hey, what's a fair exchange for both of us? Yeah. Not like, hey, I'm over you and I want to get out of this and this is what you're going to get. It's all about the tone and how you approach the conversation.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because my first marriage, I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything. I was just barely starting out.
Yeah.
And then I got married in 2007. And then right after that, we had a recession. And that was like the toughest time for me.
Yeah.
Like I literally, my business went down like 70%.
Wow.
And, my house was getting foreclosure notices and at that time, in 2009, my first baby was born.
Oh, wow.
So that was like the worst time. As a Persian guy, I wanted to make sure I'm financially secure. So I thought I was financially secure. I almost lost it all, and then next thing you know, I finally started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in 2014. Started like making a little bit of money. When I went out making money, nothing what I'm making now, and all of a sudden, like in September 2014, I was served with divorce papers. Oh. And just when I was getting myself out, right? So check this out. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, so I moved out and everything else like that. But then in 2015, we got separated in 2014. 2015, I tripled what I made in 2014. In 2016, I tripled that. 2017, I tripled that. But now she's coming after me for after that.
Yeah, but the minute in California that you separate, anything that's community is no longer community, even though they try to argue that. But you lucked out that you kind of.
I know, but we're still like it's
still a battle.
And in divorce courts, it's still a battle. Like everything is this. I'm like, dude, like she's not entitled to that.
It becomes really sad. It becomes really dirty. It becomes really messy, and that's why I'm saying these documents are to avoid situations like that. And this is the thing that's really important. Make sure you have enough time when you are about to get married. Don't give it to someone like a week before, because that's not going to be valid. They need to have their own attorney. You need to have your own attorney, and then it's going to get negotiated back and forth. But you got really lucky in that situation. There are a lot of people that go through really bad divorces, and they literally earned everything themselves. And I don't mean to put down their spouses, but really, it's like you didn't do anything. Why should I give you all of this?
Well, it's it was one of those things that I'm like, she was like, damn, I kicked them to the curb
at the wrong time.
You know what I mean? Because I was like, I was making okay when I met her, then we went right down.
Yeah.
And then when I started just making it back again, bam.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm in a better place now.
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. So that was God kind of testing you, like, don't let this happen again.
So who should? I think maybe I know the answer. Who should have a, revocable trust? Anybody who has assets over $150,000.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're 18 or over, you have assets over $150,000, please do it. If I tell you one of the horror stories the cases that I just handled, this woman comes to me and says, this man died, he's worth $10 million, and he's my father. And he didn't know he was my father. I'm like, okay. So long story short, this man has kids out of wedlock, gets married to another woman, has a family with this woman. The woman dies first. They don't have a trust. So he inherits everything because they were both on title for all the assets. Then he dies. Then, because he didn't have a trust or a will, the courts have a way of dividing your assets. Like I said, if you don't have a plan, they have one for you. Yeah. So it goes to kids first. Whether you have a relationship with that kid or not, if you don't have something in place and say, these are the only kids I agree with that are my children, any other person, they're not my children, the court is not going to know what your intent was. So we had to prove that this woman was actually this man's biological child through DNA testing through a half-sibling, and she inherited like $2 million without having a relationship with this man not knowing that he was her father. And it's wrong in many ways, but that's the law. That's what's on the books, because not only did she inherit half of his estate, but half of this woman's estate that she had no relationship with. So you can just imagine how pissed off those kids were from that marriage.
And for will, 18 and assets under $150,000.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And who should have a irrevocable trust?
Irrevocable trust, if you are a high net worth client, if you have, you're in a career.
High net worth, what do you consider high net worth?
I consider any 2 to 5 million range. I consider high net worth. Okay. I mean, I know people make way more than that, but even if you're in the 2 to 5 million, even 1 million, you should have some asset protection, irrevocable trust. Also, people, if you're in a high risk job, if you're a surgeon, if you are in construction, you own a business, you deal with employees, people are coming in and out, you understand, you're dealing with all types of people, you don't know their background, sometimes they get mad at you for the wrong reasons, they start a lawsuit, you need to have some asset protection in irrevocable trust.
Got it. Well, I've learned so much, and I was so looking forward to you coming here and schooling me, And for those entrepreneurs, people who are, starting business right now, or people who have already started business, it's very important, for you to have a strategy of your business, a strategy for protecting your assets, a strategy of all the things that you don't want to talk about.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Death, divorce,
And love.
and taxes. And love. Naz, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.